welcome back. 7.7, Three Waters renewal priorities, and this is ours, not government. Anna?
Thank you. So, yes, so to be clear, this has got nothing to do with the reform. This is our asset renewals priorities. We've communicated in the past recently the new Three Waters renewals contract that we led. What that has done is give us the ability to put some figures to our priorities and make those priorities fit into our long-term plan budgets or our annual plan budgets. So we've started, we wanted to share with you what we've started with. We started with water supply reticulation, identified what our three highest priorities looks like, and we're currently doing exactly the same with the wastewater. We will then align our priorities with our budgets and then deliver. So this is for information, and there would be a subsequent paper going to the project policy in middle of April.
Taking it as read. Questions? Councillor Cretney.
Johannes, I'm a little bit concerned by Chester Road estimated cost, 1.56 million. Back in 2020, we were told, and we agreed to it as a council, we voted in favour of the 2.1 kilometres of pipe in most serious need of replacement to be upgraded, and the figure put to that was 350k, and that was then backed up by a local Wairarapa contractor, a major local, I don't know who it was. They said 378k. So my concern is we're at 1.56 million for estimated costs, and I know that's 3.4 kilometres. My concern is that's only estimated, but also it was suggested back then that the pipe from the railway line to 160 Chester Road, just this side of the cemetery, wasn't in need of replacing. It was the last 2.1 kilometres that was desperate need. So I'm just quite concerned that these costs is the main thing when we put a certain figure into the budget for that renewal.
Perhaps I could start and then allow Johannes to correct me. The plan, you are correct, the long-term plan contains a budget figure of around $350,000 for a specific project on Chester Road. And what we've been able to do now is we've done two major contract tenders following the review of our contracting and procurement processes that was after the wastewater treatment plant and the clock tower review. So the team has let and tendered and let a professional services contract, which is essentially a project management scoping design. And we've recently let a renewals contract, which was easy figures. So the actual delivery. So we've now gone to market, tested the market, and let these two major parts of how we do our contracting. And what that does is it allows us not only to contract a project, but contract an ongoing program of works. And that gives us pricing and materials and contract rates that run for a long period of time, rather than just doing a piece rate. We've got this piece of pipe that we'd like to do, go to the market. We've got that piece of pipe, go to the market. So that's the process we've gone through, and that process has been a robust public and tender process. We've figured out the best thing for Carterton in the long term. We've used those rates from that procurement process in order to estimate up these costs. And what we would like to do with this paper is just give a heads up to council that we've got some decisions that we will need to make in projects and policy. And this is a bit of a heads up. We're happy to bring the detail through to projects and policy around the 2.1 kilometres. Perhaps we go up to the cemetery, perhaps we move beyond that. But I guess what we were proposing here was, regardless of Chester Road, and I'm not dismissing Chester Road, we have 3 high priority areas that we could start with in the water space. And we probably have, I think you said about 20 or 70 high priority areas that we have in the wastewater space. So part of the question is the cost, and part of the question that we would like a little bit of guidance on is which one would you like us to do first? Because there's a lot of high priority areas. So
Sorry, Johannes.
Can I just want to answer some of the questions you've asked as well. So one of the challenges going to putting a project into the long-term plan is it is really an estimate. You don't have a design. It's based on a discussion with a contractor and they give you some rates. And that has been a challenge. I think that's a challenge to everybody. So that 350 wasn't a tendered outcome, and it wasn't based on a specific design. So since that paper, that line has been designed, so there's a detailed design for it, and we now have the real rights to deliver it in full. So that's probably why there's a difference. I can't say to how accurately or how much work has gone into the original estimate, but based on where we currently is, the estimate that we have now is a true reflection of what it would take to deliver that piece of the network. What this contract also allows us is to look at alternatives. So we know that the priority is there, but we could look at alternative ways to deliver the same service. So maybe instead of a main, a rider main, or whatever, we can dig into the detail and other options without being bound to a specific time frame or a specific contract.
Okay. So I'm just thinking back when we agreed to the 350K to do it at the time. That was after consultation with those the residents living on that road. And council at the time thought that was probably good value for money, if I can put it that way. To me, looking at that 1.56 million for 22 people, I look at it now, hang on a minute, that is a heck of a lot of money to be spending for 22 people to upgrade a piece of pipe, which was part of the initial conversation we had back in 2020, because we had people coming in, residents coming in speaking in public gallery and so forth about the pipe needing to be upgraded, and could we take away their water supply and so forth and force them to have tanks? And so
If they pay a 70 grand connection fee, it's cheaper to give them water tanks.
So that's one reason I'm just really concerned about that 1.56 is, do we need to look at that as one specific project? And should we be going ahead with something like that when the cost could be quite a bit higher than that compared to when we first agreed to it?
I think this comes back to our commitment, management's commitment, that we're not going to start anything without giving you an accurate estimate of the time, the scope, and the cost to deliver it. And sometimes that'll involve having hard conversations. So what we'd like to do with this paper is give you a heads up that we'd like to have a hard conversation about our priorities. Start first. We have taken your advice, gone and put in place professional services contracts and renewals contracts. And Johannes will tell me that the pricing that we're getting in some of these contracts is cheaper than the pricing we were getting 3 years ago on some of our specific, we only want you to tender on that piece of work, because the contractors are able to have an ongoing relationship with us. They're able to buy equipment, they're able to employ staff and have those costs, and we share in the benefit of an ongoing relationship. But it will mean that projects and policy will have to have some some tough conversations about what you'd like us to do first.
Can I just,
Yeah,
there's a line in here, our works program will align with approved annual plan budgets. We've just got an example here, of one which is
Mhm.
500% higher than was in the plan. So I'm just struggling to reconcile those two things. So this figure, these figures here, I'm just talking about the water supply, 900K for Brooklyn Road, 2.65 High Street, 1.56 for Chester Road. Are they in the plan? Or are they just miles higher than what's currently planned?
Councillor Lawrence, so the intention is that we look at priorities and on the value of setting that priority regardless of the budget. So if we're not looking at the budget, what would be our priorities? Then we look at what is in our budgets, and then we try and align what we see as our highest priorities with our ability to deliver it or to fund that. Having those projects as priorities, or not those projects, those priorities doesn't mean that we're starting to deliver on them. We first need to be able to fund those priorities, and that means that we need to all three of those are priority ones based on the rest of our network. So high priority. So we need to, within those three priorities, we would have to prioritize within priority ones.
Perhaps I could answer the budget question. So usually we have a depreciation reserve, a block of funding for renewals, for waters renewals. Chester Road was unusual insofar as it had a specific identified project for Chester Road in the long-term plan, but normally we just have a block of funding available for waters renewals, and we spend that block of funding. So that's what that line means. They'll align with our current approved plans. We're not proposing to add to that lump, that block of funding that we have for waters renewals, wastewater renewals, and stormwater renewals.
I've got a question on page 96 around the wastewater reticulation and the renewals, and it is about prioritisation. You said that the prioritisation for the water supply reticulation is based on the rest of the network. How do you prioritise wastewater renewals? Do you have a scale of priority, and if so, what is it?
So if you look at the next image on page 97, that is a screenshot of the wastewater reticulation, and the red lines are priority ones for wastewater. So we would use exactly the same process to identify the priorities for wastewater. The team just started with water supply and are now busy with the wastewater. So we're following exactly the same process.
So the other day when we met with Colin, I asked what his priority would be for wastewater renewals, and he said he had a very simple priority list, and it was unplanned, untreated overflows. Do we have any of that happening in the Carterton community in untreated, unplanned overflows during rain events or anything like that?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
And then they immediately go to the top of your priority list?
They get prioritised as well as with a number of other factors, including the type of the pipe, the number of faults we've had in that particular area, the number of connections in that area, and so the size of the pipe, whether it's a lateral or a main. There's a number of risk factors that go into there, which will come up with an overall risk rating for that pipe.
Are there any health and safety issues to people's communities and residents when we have the unplanned, untreated overflows?
Absolutely, there are. Yeah.
And then we're cognizant of making this priority.
Hence you've got a black and white one, Mara. Is it colour?
No, colour. I can.
So hence the red lines, our highest priority, and then the orange lines are the next highest priority. So those are the areas of the network that we would consider highest priority.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Yeah.
The other thing that we are very aware of as well is that when it does surcharge, that's not necessarily where the problem is.
Yes.
And that's why we're using this method of determining our highest priorities, because the highest priorities are likely causing the effect.
The other things.
So if we can address the root of the problem, we can resolve the issue.
Sorry, I don't mean to labour the point. And lastly, though, if there are residents who are having unplanned, untreated overflows onto their properties, I know when you look at the wider scheme, you need to fix where the root of the problem is. Are we ensuring that those residents are being treated, everything is being done for that not to happen on their property? Despite, we've got to go find the cause, we've got to make sure it doesn't flow onto other people. Are they experiencing this on a regular?
So we've had a few properties that had those kind of issues. We've put mechanisms in place to reduce that or to manage that risk. So we are focusing on those areas as a normal business as usual.
Perhaps I could also add, I think councillor Gallen might have something to add because it has his properties that impacted. There's a two-speed strategy here that we have to adopt. One is fixing the network, and that strategy is a long-term plan, right? So we might get a lot of initial benefit by fixing the pipes that we know are the worst affected, and then beyond that you get this diminishing return of fixing your pipes to reduce the amount of surcharging. That's a long-term play, and that will go well beyond council and into the water services entity. So we have to have the plan. We have to know which pipes are the priority first to get the biggest bang for buck. And then there is a more immediate effect of what can we do to mitigate surcharging on properties right now with short-term works. And what we've done in place is we put in place the long-term plan of how do we manage the pipe network upgrade ongoing, and that is professional services contract and renewals contract. Now that we've got that in place, we'll set that off and running. We'll start focusing on how do we mitigate the short term, which is really how our ops team kick in and help with backflow prevention devices on some of the properties to ensure that when the network does surcharge, we don't have all of that surcharge coming out one particular manhole across one particular individual.
Is that working?
Yes,
Great. Okay,
the limit to how many times you go to the toilet, that's all.
they're not working.
No, it's working.
At least it's not surcharged.
Now, that's what he's saying, we're not getting all of Carterton come up now.
You're not the waste disposal plant for Carterton anymore.
With the flap in there, we only just back up what we use.
Okay,
So yes, it's working.
thank you.
Are we charging him for the?
I think we'd be in deficit if
Don't
we
go
were.
there, don't go there, don't go there. Any other questions? Looks like policy and.
I just got some discussion, but
Yeah.
questions first.
I've just got one more question, Johannes, just the Chester Road one. The 2.1 kilometres that was talked in the budget or in the long-term plan to be upgraded, that was only servicing 6, I think, properties. Is it possible to separate that out in policy and projects, so that there can be discussion about whether it's worth doing the railway crossing to the end of the cemetery, because that deals with a lot more properties, and more conversation around the 6 from that, depending on the costs, obviously.
We can do that.
So break it down, Sam, breaking it down, Chester 1, Chester 2.
I know it's probably not going to appease some of the residents there, but I think we need to have that conversation again. Thank you.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Just so, Aileen.
I just had a technical question. In future with reports, could you do a little key of what the different colours
Yeah, thank
mean?
you.
Because I was looking at these going, I'm not quite sure, bad or other, so that would be great.
We will. It's quite possible that Johannes did a really good report and the CEO edited it.
Right.
There you go.
Grab the picture and not the.
Yep.
I thought the green was perfect and nothing to be done there.
That's what I thought as well.
Exactly. I thought, well, what about all the black? Right. Are there any discussion, Brian, councillor Della?
Yeah, I did, just looking at, that table, probably in an answer to Steve's question, that 22 in Chester Road is actually population or is that properties?
It's connection.
It's connection, okay, that's all right. So, yeah, my thoughts on this report, and it's a really good report. But what it does highlight to me is how costs and are getting uncontrollable and are skyrocketing. Not only that, I think the specs are changing as well. The specs of how you supply and what you've got to do to supply potable water now has changed since 2018 when we first did that estimate or that pricing that I got of 378K. So I would say now that some of the estimates that we have been getting in the past have obviously been underestimated, and that has been a problem. And thanks to Jeff and his team, now we are getting on top of that. But one other thought that we did discuss fairly well last year was that the idea of leaving our town's assets in the best possible condition before transitioning to Three Waters. And so this prioritises this, and we've got three good areas there that will obviously improve our assets a hell of a lot before we transition. The other thing that we could do is we don't do any of them when we wait for the transition, sit on our butt and then wait for 10 years for them to happen. So, the money that we have in reserves should be spent. We've just got to prioritise it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue into the question I was really going to ask. When this comes to policy and project, we need to be considering the risks around not doing some of this work, even though it doesn't stack up financially. Exactly as Brian said, the risk of handing it forward to Three Waters and having it never reach a priority status. And also a question around if these projects, say, were done tomorrow or action tomorrow and they were fully loan funded, does the debt carry forward to Three Waters? So, what is the holding costs for our ratepayers, assuming Three Waters goes ahead, and so forth. It's not a discussion for right now, but I'm just saying when we talk about it in policy and projects, let's see the whole picture, not just the raw connections versus cost, because there's more things at play now with Three Waters in the mix.
Yeah,
Will do.
I think any other discussion? Yes.
I assume that High Street is High Street North,
I would,
It's the picture of High Street. So yes,
and we'll be using GNC diggers.
yes.
What sort of fish hooks being a main highway? How are we going to go?
So,
our roading manager will answer.
so we've got
Traffic down?
So we actually have an opportunity on High Street to work together with Waka Kotahi. We've been having discussions with them since last year of aligning our FordWorks program with theirs, because they've done some temporary works on High Street North, but they're actually planning to do permanent renewals there as well. So if we could align our priorities and our budgets with their priorities, we could actually have a significant saving in terms of reinstatement and traffic management. So we are trying to work with that. We haven't done so in terms of fish hooks. We haven't gone into the details of the design of each of these projects and all the risks associated. But there will be many.
So that's why they've left the road like that.
Yeah.
But so you're saying going to try and avoid the situation where Waka Kotahi come and seal the road, make it lovely, and then we go along and dig it up.
Yes.
That's what we-
My concern there, councillor Lawrence, is that Wellington City will hear about this man and will recruit him there and will lose him.
Don't leave.
He won't because
Offer him more money. I've got a tiny little question and it's, are we delivering Portaloos currently to residents for overflow reasons?
So we've engaged where we need to. So we've had Portaloos come through, particularly staged at Carrington Park and where our other public toilets are, where we know the network is currently backed up and we've got surcharging. Our challenge is, sadly, our council to the north tends to grab most of them before a storm event. Last time we found we couldn't actually get hold of any. But the ones that we do have, we do certainly put around the network when we expect surcharge.
Not into individual resident.
We prefer to put them next to our public toilets because everyone knows that that's where they are. That's a much easier place to put them.
Can I just add to that as well? So when we do have an extended period of disruption at the properties, we do take a Portaloo out. What we've also done in anticipation of events, we do get in contact with them and book in advance. So we've done that with Hale, with Cyclone Hale. We did book in advance. So we do provide and we do try and plan. But like Jeff mentioned, that's private businesses and they do have other priorities as well.
The reason I'm asking is if we know we're doing that for those residents, then they are, and we're planning that. How long has that been going on and how long is it going to take for a Portaloo not to be the mitigation, but a fix?
how long it takes to do this.
So
It's the long-term
It's the
network renewal
Yeah.
plan.
I think I'm signaling that.
Yes, where we are. I'm very conscious of time, people. We're 11:45, set to finish at 1. So very need to move, I guess. The only question, is there anyone else with a final question or comment? The only question, when policy and projects look at this, and I know councillor Cretney's just raised the question whether you're going to have Chester Road 1 or Chester Road 2. It'd be interesting for me to see not just the connections, but what the population is, if those numbers are known within those areas, because it might be, I don't know how that would change our thinking. But if you, and I get a lot more confidence in these numbers because I think back to some past numbers on some projects and they were always very light and so proved to be so to the detriment. So I have confidence in that. But I'm just wondering if in policy and projects you shouldn't be having a conversation around how far that line should go and what you would have to, what the expectations of those residents would be if another option was considered. And like, is it cheaper to give people water tanks and a pump than putting in, than doing this work?
They'd be treated as though just ordinary rural and they would be providing their own.
Yeah, well, but right now the line goes out there, doesn't it? It goes all the way out, that yellow line on Chester Road. I mean, I recall back in 2010, 2012, the same conversation as, what was the thinking around putting a line out that far at the time? And I think you're pumping uphill, aren't you?
Yep.
So when you look at the technical issues of maintaining that line, creating that head of pressure to service those people right at the very end of it, that doesn't stack up. You wouldn't build that today, in my view. Yeah.
I think the line was the other way around and they were at the start.
No, all right.
So it used to come down
Came back.
Chester Road,
Yeah.
rather than we were
Yeah.
pumping it up.
Yeah,
The
so-
the intention of the paper was really to start this conversation with council in ordinary council, rather than start it in a subcommittee and those who weren't part of that committee not be involved. So really, we wanted to give a heads up, start this conversation, really good conversation, lots of questions. Let's bring them back to projects and policy.
You've done that well. Someone to the report, please. councillor Cretney, second councillor Della. All in favour? Aye. Motion's carried. Thank you. 7.8, thank you.
Thank you.
Thought provoking. Thank
That
you.
was the intent.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
certainly did that.
Yeah. CE's report.
Kia ora team, I've got two things to add that have changed since I had prepared my senior report. You will recall, you asked me to write a letter to the Department of Conservation and express our concern around Carter's Reserve, of which I did. And we sent a number of photographs to the Chief Executive of the Department of Conservation, concerned about the access to Carter's Reserve, the boardwalk, state of the boardwalk, the amount of blackberry and pest vegetation in there, and also the lack of harakeke flax that was available for use by Rangi Marae. So I received a letter back last week from the department that noted our concerns, that noted the boardwalk was due for upgrade potentially in the next 2 or 3 years, and that they were stretched in work in terms of their workload, and that they would bring their attention to Carter's Reserve when they had sufficient resources. We responded, in fact, Department of Conservation, for their very comprehensive response. And I got a note saying that this was the person's last day at Department of Conservation.
Now in the round out tray.
Thanks for that.
So that was that update. And my second update is in terms of Jay, who has now completed, Jay, you will
Jay.
recall, is on a weekly trial with the Canine Explosive Detection Unit in Wellington, and each week that goes past, they are tested at the end of the week and continue on. So Jay's now past his 5th week
Wow,
in training,
very cool.
which is
Good news.
Very cool. Very cool story. Tom's.
Cool.
Okay,
happy
Anything
to
else?
take questions.
right.
That-
It's a
stay with
very,
Jay.
it's a large report. In fact, I went searching for the article on Jay in the paper and when I read that.
106.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Okay, so there's a lot in this report. Weapons free.
Thanks, His Worship. Thanks, Jeff. Always appreciate your reports. Question on page 99 around Waka Kotahi. We know Prime Minister Hipkins has made it quite well known that he's reprioritised $1 billion. Is the Waka Kotahi Transport Choices funding still available, or is there a chance that it might disappear? And so
Perhaps I'll just hand over to Linda, our community services manager, who's got an exciting update on that.
So to answer your question, it's still going ahead as planned. As of today, we've just found out that we've received another 180,000 to support with the bike sheds to go into some of the Carlton schools.
Nice.
So
Brilliant.
yes, it's going ahead, and yes, we've got more.
Cool.
fantastic.
Awesome.
Very cool.
That's a great start to the.
Emily got that, so.
Winning.
It's going ahead, and we got another 180,000. To support bike sheds in the various schools.
Awesome.
Very cool. Next.
Another good question.
Just around the Anzac Parade, great to hear that planning's well underway. Is the RSA involved in that
Yes.
planning? And is also Club Carbison? With what's happening there, that's all.
I'm not 100% sure, I'm not over the details, but I can find out and get back to you.
Could supplementary to that, I wrote a note there. Could you give us a brief as to what the plan is? Because I've been trying to get information from the president for a while now, and as a member of the RSA, have no idea. The reason I'm asking you is because I'm the patron of Featherston, and I've been asked to attend all of their services, and I've set priority to Carterton so long as I know what we are doing.
Off the top of my head, I only know the very basics. But I can find out from Jenny, who's organising it, and get back to you.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic, thank you. It's just around the corner, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay,
We're going to raise the Māori flag.
next questions. Yes, councillor Aileen.
I just had a question with regard to page 104. You're talking about the upkeep of the gardens, etc. And I was just wondering if there's a time frame of when the flower beds are going to be replaced with the less time consuming gardens of grasses and that kind of thing.
To start putting the garden beds over this week.
Yeah.
We're hoping to get the majority of them completed before Anzac Day because we want the gardens to look as beautiful as we can for that day. So we'll be focusing down at the square and then working back, but you should start seeing it this week.
Awesome. And is there plans to continue with the flower baskets in front of the shops?
Yeah, so they've come down to be replaced at the moment.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Nguyen.
Event waste minimisation.
Yeah.
There was discussion around funding being available for that. Is that a thing that is happening?
Watch this space.
Okay. Cool. That answers that question.
1 zero waste coordinator across 3 council, and we're pulling him in a lot of different ways.
Cool. Another question I had was just around the event centre and the reporting we get for that. From my opinion, like the marketing stats and the spend just doesn't seem as important to me as perhaps the proportion of shows that are sold out or capacity or how many shows are booked in advance or the profit. I just don't think the information we're getting from the event centre really.
Okay. Some more about attendance and
Costs.
the events.
Costs. Yeah, bums on seats, usage. I just like the Facebook reach doesn't,
Equate to sales.
yeah.
Okay, happy to take that feedback.
Like it's running at a profit, is that what you're wanting to know?
Yeah, how much are we losing?
That's. Councillor Aileen.
On page 106, the district plan review, I was just wondering the amount of feedback that we received. Was council disappointed or surprised? I feel like it's fairly light, having 31 individuals reply on the rural zone changes, 15 submissions on the general residential zone. Is that what we'd usually expect to receive on a consultation like that?
In a very, very early draft stage, absolutely, that's
Okay.
not an unusual number. It was very similar to the last time. It's when it starts holding some statutory weight and it's gone through that process, is when we will start seeing significant submissions coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we were quite pleased with that level, and there also have been quite a lot of community engagement events that we hadn't done when the operative plan now was developed. They did some, but we were at the ANP shows. We had community drop-in sessions, and some of them were really, really well attended. So I think we did a whole lot of things outside where the feedback got fed into the committee.
Thank you.
Supplementary to that, in regards to the district plan and the zoning, are we participating with Marsden District Council? I know we had three councils were involved in the Māori purposes zone. And is there anything coming back from that yet? Because we've had quite a good and far-ranging consultation at Te Orero Marae, and it was for the 3 councils. So I'm just wondering where that is at.
So I'm going to look to Solitaire or possibly Ryan on the working group.
The final chapters of the Māori purpose zone haven't come to the committee yet because we were waiting for them to be developed in conjunction with the iwi. So the district plan committee is a Wairarapa combined plan committee, 2 reps from each of the councils, plus we have representatives from Hurunui-Orangi being Rā and Rangatane Tumaira Trust.
Yep.
There was 4 invites out to the iwi authorities, both the iwis and the mandated iwi.
Good on you.
So we have 2 reps on there, and they've been working really, really hard with all the hapu and as that event up at Te Ori to try and really get the rules nailed down for the Māori purpose zone, so that when we're looking at maybe July, August going out with that plan,
Yes.
they're in there. So
Well, I know we did quite a
yeah,
good amount of work on it that day, and it was then put back to council staff, who I think were the Marsden council staff. to then collate it, put it together. I've just seen nothing come back yet.
Here with leading that, so that will go to the advisory group first to run our eyes over it.
Yeah, cover
And then
it.
it will go to the committee.
Okay,
But yeah, so that hasn't got to the committee stage yet.
thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Newman.
I just want to say a big thank you for Glenda for doing the accessibility work at the pool. That was a really big help and I've had really great feedback from the people involved in that.
Can I just update on that, to say that somebody who's really
Nice.
Just a question. We don't have microphones over on.
No, we don't. That's why we normally ask.
Yeah, officials
as
to
we
come
go.
over. Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
Any,
We
councillor.
might not want a microphone over.
Councillor Gretney.
Just with the swimming pool, it's really great to hear that the contractor's fronting up to make those changes to the slide. I'm guessing that's at their expense, just to making it so it's a little bit.
Yeah, at this stage, it's under warranty.
And just a question on the steel that overhangs the pool.
Yeah.
Is that being looked at to be protected with?
Yeah.
As well?
That's, we are tweaking, there's going to be some adjustments to the steel that overhangs, and then we'll put some protector around it as well.
Brilliant. Another question, Worship.
Mhm.
Just around the zero waste, I know you mentioned code is being torn in all sorts of directions. I was part of the presentation on the Mainoki, and I'm just wondering, is there any kind of proposal being put to combined council that some budget is put together that this can be investigated further? Because I think it was a fantastic proposal for the Wairarapa.
So the Mainoki is, for those that were there, is a composting, vermicomposting type proposal where a lot of waste that would otherwise go into landfill is utilised in a vermicomposting way and then used on land as fertiliser. And that they were looking for long-term consistent streams of waste, whether that be biomass, food waste, or potentially sludge from wastewater ponds. That's the proposal that we've got. We are looking at renewing our solid waste contract with Smart Environmental, I think it is. And that we are looking to add in a food waste trial so that we begin diverting that food waste from landfill, which is what causes methane emissions. But we are, at this stage, we're looking to run that as a trial across Wairarapa to see whether or not, A, we get a change in consumer behaviour, and B, there is sufficient waste stream coming out that would support someone like Mainoki.
Deputy Mayor.
Just really a comment to Glenda on the walking and citing the trails delivery project. I know in getting feedback from some of the schools, the proposal is 6.2 Ks of track from Carterton servicing all the schools. But in reality, schools are bound by ministry zoning, and putting a trail from, say, Carterton to Dalefield, for example, doesn't automatically imply that lots of children will be going from Carterton to Dalefield, because there's other factors at play as to where they can pull children from. So I just want us to be careful that what we commit to and spend is actually going to get the desired use, and that, awareness of
Zoning.
that limits the school's ability to draw just from wherever they feel like.
Good comment. I just got one.
Page 104 under parks, the Sparks Park automated dog wash facility. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I'm just wondering if anybody can enlighten me a little bit more. Obviously, the discharge will go into the sewage system. Is that correct?
Yep.
And can you tell me more about it, Jeff, or does somebody know about it?
It will be, so it's obviously a privately owned facility where licensing that facility as opposed to running it. And it'll be obviously a water connection and a wastewater connection into our wastewater system. And it's really, we're not taking risk on it other than through the licensing and potentially the water use. Allowing a private entity to figure out whether or not there is demand.
Shampoos and everything that they'll be using to do freely.
Pay a connection fee?
There'll be a water meter on it.
There will be a water meter, it's commercial use.
Anything else?
Right, cool.
Give you an update on what page 104, Keep Cardiff Beautiful. They also had their morning tea here.
Mhm.
And the special guest was Honourable Andrew Little.
Lovely.
Foxton. And gave him a bit of a surprise.
Did he shout?
No, he didn't know he was coming. I called him here. But it was good, it was good. Any other questions? I guess, I've got one around Kaipa Tangata. Just put a bit.
Yeah. Sure. Your question?
Yeah, I'm just noting the very intermittent supplies. Is that because of what's that?
So Frederick Street at the moment has been, or up until now, has been running on a binary supply. So it is either using bores or it is using the Kaipa Tangata. So that means where we want to do work on the Kaipa Tangata, we have to supply the entire town off the bores. And we are unable to mix and mingle. The Frederick Street upgrade that we're doing at the moment is both around the water purification as well as giving us the ability to run both plants at the same time on a lower frequency, but also potentially where we have a fire in town and the fire service require more pressure in town, we're able to increase the pressure by using both the Kaipa and the bores at the same time to supply the internal network. But at the moment, what has been, and the graph that you've been seeing there, has been us running on either one or the other, depending on use, turbidity up in the Kaipa, whether we need the bore supply, etc. So, it's been binary to date.
Yeah, I was just looking for the reason why it was very intermittent.
We do quite a lot of work and need to do more work on the Kaipa Tangata main trunk line, particularly where it crosses bridges. There has been, where the earth moves, we've had a couple of earthquakes and that tends to put pipes out of alignment. So we need to do more work on ensuring that supply. Johannes might.
I can just add the reason why it's intermittent is that when normally this time of year we would be running off the Kaipa, but if during a rain event the turbidity is so high, and then we can't use it, then we have to use the Frederick Street. So that's the main reason for the switch over at this time of year.
Right. So it's the heavy rainfall, cyclone, hail and Gabrielle. Okay. Other comments? Otherwise, just scanning back through notes.
I've got one.
Yes, thank you.
Just about the library service, I see there's been a sharp increase in usage and we've had to shut, well, the library's shut some days. At what point does that come back to them asking us for more budget for staff?
Most days.
Okay.
Yep. So it's a challenge. The Wairarapa Combined Library Services is combined in name, and the challenge we have is we're joined with South Wairarapa and this group. They have libraries in Greytown, Featherston and Marsden. Greytown, Featherston and Martinborough, and we have a library here. The libraries in South Wairarapa are also service depots, so the staff are required to service council facilities, particularly around dog registrations, rubbish bags, etc., etc. Whereas here, it is just a library. The So there's quite a lot more training involved and staffing involved in South Wairarapa libraries. We are very conscious that 3/4 of our library services time are based in South Wairarapa, and we have limited ability to control South Wairarapa's decision around staffing for libraries. We engage as much as we can, but we're 1/4 of 4 libraries, and so it's really a South Wairarapa issue.
Okay. Councillor Cretney?
As we're just on the under the parks, I think it's a great thing, the council agreeing to the dog wash station as such, but just a question around the user pay system. Will the user pay system allocate a certain amount of water for using that? And if not, how will the allocation be allocated, if I can put it that way, per dog or charged to the person who's actually putting it in there?
Yeah, so it's all on a timer, and you get all the different functions. So you've got the rinse, you've got the shampoo, and you turn the knob. You get 10 minutes total, and then within that time you go right through from rinse, shampoo, condition, blow drying, and cleaning the tub after the fact. I think the water usage is probably max 3 minutes each dog. So it's all, and it's all automated in the way that there's going to be no cash in the machine either. So it's all going to be pay wave or token.
And just a supplementary to that, so with the water that is coming off the dogs, is that going into
Our wastewater net.
Yep. Cool.
That's an interesting link over because Sparks Park is a trust and we support where we can. And this is a business essentially operating on a trust's property, which we're facilitating through the connectivity and potentially charges.
That's why putting the toilet block
that's-
in there.
It's nice little bit of collaboration there, from what I can see. Jeff, there's 2 things. I want to, paragraph 10 on page 119. Thank you.
Okay, let me get it.
Submission on the review of the future of local government.
So use your words.
I'm just saying thank you. Thank you very much. And the other one is, you want maybe just give people, because they aren't privy to the decisions that were made on Monday regarding civil defence and recovery, and pages 118. Just a bit of an
Kia ora.
update, yeah.
So on the recovery group is made up of Mana Whenua, the 3 mayors and the Rural Support Trust, as well as a Public Services Commissioner. They reviewed 5 applications on Monday, totaling $68,000 worth of requests, and they were all approved. There's a bunch of other applications that the recovery managers are still working through. So the first $68,000 worth of Mayoral Relief Fund has gone out, and we are working through with some other applicants in order to get the new ones through. Total Mayoral Relief Fund is $215,000, and on top of that, there is approximately $250,000 worth of business support package that's come from the government as well. So bringing the total fund to about $465,000, which the recovery group is looking to push out into our community. Mayor Mark has been one of them, and myself have been very keen to support that goes out quicker rather than slower. So we would like to see that money out in our community rather than sitting in the bank account. So roughly $465,000, of which $68,000 has been approved at the first meeting. And so if you know of anyone who has been impacted by the cyclones, either in their business or in their personal life, and they may be eligible for this fund, please get them to apply.
So the iwi is very strongly represented in those conversations with Robin Patongaroa, Tia, Paddy and Joe Hayes. And there's been strong messaging going out to marae and who were providing support at cost to come back and very strong applications from certain families out in the rural, particularly Tanui, Matakona area, who got smashed. And the emphasis is to drive hard, stronger community engagement, getting applications in, helping people fill them in so that we can get this money out to there as soon as we can. So some of the photographs that we've seen of the damage inflicted and bridges that have been cut off, cutting people's access to their homes, separating the road from their home and having to get kids across a river stream so they can go to kindy, or go to preschool, and so the parents can go, so the family can go shopping in town. Some pretty serious challenges out there.
One instance, there was a bridge that was a vehicle bridge and the family were crossing the vehicle bridge in their car every day. And currently now the car's on the wrong side of the bridge and they're walking across an I-beam, literally to get to the other side. So
Yes.
shout out too for Karatan's event centre. So our Smarty Grants application that we use for council's grant application has been reskinned and is now being used for the Wairarapa Recovery Group, both the Merrill Fund and the business support package. So that allowed us, our team were really supportive and allowed it to get up quickly and up and running so that we can have grant applications coming through as fast as possible. So thanks to the team.
And just a heads up for the Deputy Mayor, the very first amendment we made to our terms of reference will be to make provision for Deputy Mayors to be able to stand in when the mayors are absent on the governance decision-making body, because we had I was left on my own.
Where?
On Monday. Done. Okay. Anyway.
Make all the decisions wrong.
Got on 68,000 out the window. Good. Okay, so are there any further questions, any comments? No? Recommendation, council receives the report. Someone to move, please. Councillor Cretney, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All in favour?
Aye.
Motion's carried. How's the time? Fast. 7.9, governance statement. 22-25. Here we go, Cal.
So this paper in the governance, attached governance statement, I suppose, explain a bit about the reason for bringing it to council. It's a requirement of the legislation within 6 months of the election. Council do not actually have to adopt it, but given it's a governance statement, we bring it up to you. The information you may notice within the governance statement is actually all information included in the cases anyway. So some of it's from, you will notice it from your induction and code of conduct and so on. So there's nothing really new there. So after it's been to council, then we would publish it on our website to make it public. But I'm happy to take questions.
Are there any questions? Pretty pro forma. Yeah, the one I just might draw attention to is 6.1, 129. I think we're going to come to a point where we need to have a conversation. Think about how we do that, Marama. Whether wards are the best way ahead or whether
I did have the
hapu representatives directly, so that the hapu knows that the person is there is not just a popular rugby player.
Yep.
Happens to be Māori.
Absolutely.
Pardon that.
We did have a conversation I did have a conversation with the previous mayor when we were looking at putting Māori wards in around Wairarapa. Had a protest down south Wairarapa. But in Carterton, what I understand is there is possibly about 800 Māori live within the boundaries of Carterton District Council, and whether or not having a Māori ward for 800 members who then also had 800 Māori who then also had to be on the Māori roll whether or not that would be an effective way of getting representation. And I think what you have is effective representation currently, and with people sitting on the committees that we do, it's unique what you do. And I value it immensely because you're talking to the people of the mana whenua who live and reside the rohi pōtai here. Exactly. And also with Joel's contributions that he's been able to make from living in Tauranga, but because he represents the hapu, which hasn't had a lot of representation for years. I think we are currently meeting, we're meeting Treaty of Waitangi statements throughout the reporting, throughout the consultation, and it's not an ad hoc thing for representation. So, I mean, if the community got together and said, we want a Māori board for our 800 people, God damn it, then it would be something that we'd have to revisit. At the minute, I believe personally that you're getting good representation and input and quality consultation with the way things are. And if that changes because of people, then we review it.
Yeah, I concur. I think the key point in there is that to have that conversation so that when we get the drop down, which might well just confirm what we're currently doing, we can evidence the conversation. And that because most people seem to think that all Māori want Māori wards, and to have an election where one Māori, regardless of their skills, knowledge, tikanga, te reo, can get elected, and it may not necessarily be. And the standard democratic model is not necessarily the best model, is what you're saying.
And in saying that though, I think a statement would be necessary to acknowledge what we do.
Yeah.
That's what I would put in there. Because you could get smashed around like you've got no Māori ward, look at you, terrible, Carterton. But actually you're acting in advance of that. The difference is a Māori ward member would have voting rights.
Well.
And it's up to the council whether they want to address that. And then we come down to the democracy and the voting and elected members and so on. Your elected member from Hurunui is not elected by the community, it's elected by Hurunui-Rangi. And so there is an election well, it's like cuts, do you want to do it? Somebody agree? But there is a process of that happening, and we do have a trustee on the Hurunui-Rangi Marae committee who's responsible, who I report back to, and who's responsible for taking that to the Marae Trust with any of the issues that need to come up and be discussed. So I do believe you need a statement in there that points to the unique position that we have. And then maybe we do need to canvass a little bit so that we can be assured we have the mandate of Māori to do that.
I think the signal on this is, but this is what we need for now to meet and to be compliant. Going forward, we need to have a conversation around that conversation and maybe a workshop as to how we address that issue.
That's up through the representation review, won't it?
Yeah, that's right. So we are due for a representation review this year. So the timing we're kind of looking at starting is around June. So we're required to have it completed by December, about mid-December, to then be in place for the next election. So that is imminent. I could add, Ron, in 6.1, I could add a statement about what we are currently doing with the committee membership in the representative.
Yeah, and make the point that because on the committee, there is voting rights at the committee level before it comes here. So we're getting things passed through and having a voting right. And whether in the representation review, we want to review whether or not you have a voting right. I think we generally at this table do things by consensus largely.
Yep.
Right.
Make that an official recommendation.
Yeah.
You're not adopting it.
No, we're not. We're noting it. So if you can add.
I can add that.
Yeah, just outline what we currently do.
That would be great.
With that suggestion, I'd like someone to move that we take them both as one. One, receive the report and note that the updated governance statement, blah, 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 as worded there. Someone to move, please. Deputy Mayor, second to Councillor Dallin, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion's carried. That was very useful discussion. Thank you, Martin. And Kelly, thank you. Thank you for the guidance. Right, come statements. So we're now on to 7.1. Local Government Official Information Meetings Act requests. I note a plummeting in the numbers.
They're all from Grayson.
Definitely not.
I couldn't help but note that 2021,
Hard there, I don't know who it is.
this time, March 2021, 32, 2022, 22, 2023, 2.
I have had a couple more come in since then. I think March is around the time usually of consultation for long-term plans and annual plans. So that is usually why we get a bit of an increase during that time. But yes, it has tapered off. Last year we had significantly less than 2021. And following that same trend this year, I think.
Are there any questions? Anything? Yes, Councillor Ayling.
I just had one question, page 153, regarding the weights for drop-offs at the refuge station. I'm wondering, is there any plan in future for us to change the way we do it from the car boot versus a accurate rate, weight of the load?
So I can answer that, and the plan is to mostly align with rates that are used in Masterton, so to avoid an arbitrage between ratepayers coming between the two. The car boot is generally something that we are happy with. We've only yesterday, I believe, the second weighbridge is now up and running. So that's now connected to a EFTPOS system and will allow vehicle weigh in and weigh out. And also it will look at license plate recognition on the way in and on the way out to compare the two, calculate where there is a significant difference. But at this stage, we're happy with the car boot because it's mostly about efficiency of operations. Beyond that, when it comes to trailer and truck and that kind of stuff, we'd prefer to use the weighbridge. So.
Any other questions? Someone to move, we receive the report, please. Councillor Cretney, Councillor Gallen, second. All in favour? Yes. Motion carried. Thank you, Cal. That's from zero. Okay. Moving to section 8. Exclusion of public recommendations publicly be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting. General subject matter of each matter to be considered while the public is excluded. The reason for passing this resolution in relation to each matter, specific grounds are covered under section 48 of the Local Government Official and Meetings Act, Information and Meetings Act 1987. For the passing of this resolution, the topics to be discussed are highlighted there in the table on page 156. Right, someone to move that we move into public excluded. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Ayling. All in favour?
Right.
Against?